Ratio tables are a very powerful, nice visual strategy or method that we can use to help us with ratio word problems, as well as rate and unit rate problems and percents. And it's especially good, I find, for percents. What we're going to do in this video is find our way around a ratio table without any context. So we're just going to get comfortable working within the table with missing values in all different locations. And we need to explore the different strategies that we could use to move around the table like you would with the game of Sudoku. So let's look. We have to look at what we have here and what we can work with. And I'm looking here and I can, and if you want, when you have a horizontal ratio table, you can think of this as a set of equivalent fractions because it's working on the same premise. Whatever you do to one of the numbers in the ratio, you have to do exactly the same thing to the other when we are using multiplicative reasoning. So what we're going to do here, I'm going to have an internal dialogue with myself. So I'm going to say, self, how do I get from 10 to 20? What do I multiply or divide 10 by to get to 20? And of course, I'm going to say I multiply by 2. And so I'm going to have to do the exact same thing up here. I have to multiply 2 times 2, and I'm going to get 4. And now I'm going to have to look elsewhere because I don't know how to get from 20 to this empty box because I don't know what the relationship is. And if I look on the top row, there's no real relationship between multiplying or dividing by a whole number to get from 4 to 6. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to start with the 2. And in this case, I'm going to move from the first column to the third column. And I know that 2 times 3 is going to give me 6. So I have to do the same thing when moving from the first to the third column on the bottom. I have to multiply by 3, and that's going to give me 30. And now I'm going to go up on the top again, and I'm going to say, okay, I have to go from the first now to the fourth. And how do I get from 2 to 10? I have to multiply by 5. And so now I'm going to have to multiply 10 times 5 to get 50. And so here you can see that after that very first one, I always started with my first column to get the subsequent values. That's not always going to be the case. So let's look at this one. Now, I could say to myself, well, I know to get from 9 to 18, I multiply by 2. But you see, that's not going to help me because I don't have a value to multiply by 2 in the first column. So I have to look elsewhere for a relationship that I know. Well, you see up on top I have an 18, so I really want to start there. And I can work in either direction, but I see that the corresponding number, the other part of the ratio down on the bottom is 27. And I know that I can get from 27 to 9 when I divide by 3. And so I'm going to have to come up here and I'm going to have to do the same thing. I'm going to divide by 3. And 18 divided by 3 is going to give me 6. Okay, so now let's see, now that I have that, what can I do? Well, now I can start with the 9 and I can go from the first to the second column. 9 times 2 is 18, and so going from the first to the second column up here, 6 times 2 is going to give me 12. Now, I have a choice right now. I can do a number of things. I can get rid of that thing that keeps appearing. I can start with 9 on the bottom, and I know that 9 times 4 is 36. So I can do this, and that's 36, and then I can start up here, and 6 times 4 is 24. But if I didn't want to do that, let's say I wasn't really sure about that one, I could have, and this is the beauty of the ratio tables, okay, I could have, instead of going from 9 to 36, I could have looked and I could have said, you know what, I see a relationship between 18 and 36. I know that 18 times 2 is 36, and so 12 times 2 is 24. So in this case, I didn't start in the first column. I started in the second column because I saw a relationship there. And that's how you're going to do this. And, you know, it depends on who you are. Some people see relationships easier from one cell to another, and some other people see different relationships. So let's come down here. All right, and right away you can probably see that there's a relationship here. 6 times 2 is 12, and so 5 times 2 is going to be 10. And now what can I do? Well, let's see. I can see a relationship between 12 and 24. Why am I doing that? Because I'm looking for the number that goes above 24. So 12 times 2 is 24. And so I'm going to go from the number in the same column, which is 10, and I'm going to multiply it by 2, and that's going to give me 20. Now, how am I going to get that last missing one? Well, I see a relationship between 5 and 15. If I multiply 5 times 3, I'm going to get 15. And so if I multiply 6 times 3, I'm going to get 18. Now you can see, if you're looking at this, that in the top row I'm doing my 5 times tables, 5, 10, 15, 20. And on the bottom, my 6 times tables, 6, 12, 18, 24. That will sometimes happen in a ratio table, but you can't always count on it, okay? You must look at the relationships. You can't just look at a couple of numbers and say, oh, these are my 5 times tables, these are my 6 times tables. Okay, let's take a look here. Well, let's see. I have to start in the first column because that's the only number I have in my bottom row. So I can do 1 times 3 is 3, and 3 times 3 is going to be 9. And then 1 times 5 is 5. 3 times 5 is 15. And then one last one. 1 times 7. And 3 times 7 is 21. And here you can see an example. So you could get fooled and say, oh, look, the bottom row is my 3 times tables. But look, 3, you see you're missing 6. Would be 3, 6, 9, and you're missing 12. So you cannot just count by 3s. Okay, a couple more. All right, this one is a little bit more difficult because we don't have a number to start out with. You can see the numbers in the top row are increasing. So I have a feeling that when I fill these in, I'm going to have to do some division. So let's take a look. I can't add or subtract. I need to do multiplicative reasoning. So if I'm going to start with 4, which is where I have to start, I can say I know that 4 divided by 2 is going to give me 2. So down here, 12 divided by 2 is going to give me 6. And then let's see what else I can do. Now I can do 2 divided by 2 is going to give me 1, and then 6 divided by 2. And if you look, is going to give me 3. If you look, the bottom and the top are exactly the same. We are doing exactly the same thing. And by the way, you will see that the arrows now are going to the left instead of to the right. You must put an arrowhead on your arrows because that is going to tell whoever's looking at your work what direction you're going. So now I'm missing one more. And I can do that a couple of different ways. I think I'm going to do, I think I will stay with division. Well, no, actually, I'm going to show you. I can do 1 times 3. And that's going to give me 3. And so 3 times 3 is going to give me 9. Okay, and so that's an example that you can work both ways. You can use multiplication and division, and you can work to the right or the left in the same table. And let's do one last one. I know here that 7 times 2 is 14. So 3 times 2 is going to be 6. And here you can tell, if you look at the top, you can look and you can say, oh, I have 3, 6, 9, 12. So I am counting by 3s. So if this is 3 times 2, this is going to be 3 times 3. And 7 times 3 is 21. And lastly, we can do, well, let's change it up a little. Let's do 6 times 2 is 12, and 14 times 2 is 28. And like everything else, doing ratios, tables, it involves kind of thinking in your own way, a way that you're comfortable, but you need to practice. Without practice, you're not going to get the skill of moving around in a ratio table and using this very helpful tool to help